I used to rent this tiny studio apartment in Chicago, right after finishing college. Nothing fancy, just a single-room space at the top of a modest 3-story walk-up. I chose it for 2 reasons. The rent was dirt cheap, and it was close to where I worked. As a 23-year-old drowning in student loans and scraping by paycheck to paycheck, I couldn't afford to be picky. It wasn't glamorous, but it was clean, functional, and, for the first time, it was completely mine. That feeling mattered. There was just one window in the place. It faced a narrow, shadowy alleyway. Directly across was a building almost identical to mine, window to window. The alley was so tight, only a compact car could slide through, and during the day, barely a drop of sunlight reached it. At night, it turned pitch black, but none of that really bothered me. I work late nights bartending on the north side, usually getting home around 2:30 or 3 a.m. I'd make a quick snack, scroll my phone, and pass out. That was my routine. Then, something happened. I'd been living there about a month when I came home one night, did my usual routine, shoes off, light on, and caught something weird in the corner of my eye, a flicker in the window across the alley, a shift, like a curtain moving. I froze for a second and stared. But when I looked again, everything was still, dark, silent. I shrugged it off. Maybe it was just a draft. Maybe I'd startled someone. Or, B, I was imagining things. But the next night, it happened again. Same deal. I flipped on the lights, and the curtain in the apartment across the alley moved. This time, I was sure, I saw a hand, just barely, pulling the curtain back before letting it fall. I couldn't make out the figure behind it, though. The apartment on that side was completely dark. No lights, no shapes, just the slightest movement in an empty black void. That's when something clicked in my brain. I'd never seen lights on in that apartment before, not once. I had always assumed it was vacant. So, who was moving the curtain? That night, I didn't sleep well. The image of that hand stuck in my mind like a splinter. Over the next week, I started watching the window more closely. Every single night, without fail, it happened again. As soon as I flipped on a light, the curtain across the alley would twitch, subtle, deliberate, like someone was reacting to me. It wasn't random anymore. It was timed. I started testing it. A few nights, I kept the lights off and sat in the dark by the window. When I did, nothing happened, total silence. But the moment I turned on even a small lamp by my couch, the curtain across the way would shift, almost like clockwork. Someone was watching me. That much was clear now. I tried to convince myself it was innocent, just some lonely night owl who liked to people watch. But that didn't explain the precise timing. It didn't explain why the lights in their place were always off, or why I never saw anyone enter or leave. Eventually, I asked my landlord about it. I kept things casual and asked who lived across the alley. He told me, point blank, the unit was vacant, had been for months. I pressed him, asking if maybe someone had just recently moved in. He shook his head and even chuckled, saying, "You're getting paranoid." Man, maybe he was right. Maybe I was being paranoid. I thought about calling the police. But what was I going to say? Hey, I think there's a person in a dark apartment across from mine who keeps moving their curtain when I turn on my lamp. No crime, no break-in, just a gut feeling that something was off. But that gut feeling got worse. Everything changed the night I got home late, later than usual, around 4 a.m. The bar had hosted a private party, and cleanup took forever. I was exhausted, running on fumes. When I reached my apartment door, I noticed something stuck in the doorframe. My first thought, junk mail, maybe a flyer or a coupon. But when I pulled it out, my heart stopped. It was a crumpled piece of paper, just one word on it, written in pen. Hey, my legs nearly gave out. My mind immediately flashed to that window, that curtain, that hand. I ran inside and sprinted to my window. Nothing. The curtain was drawn. Still, silent, the alley was empty. but my pulse was hammering in my ears. I grabbed my phone and called my friend Jamie. She lived across town and, bless her, she told me to come over immediately. I threw together a backpack with whatever essentials I could find, locked the door behind me, and got out of there. The next morning, after a long, sleepless night at Jamie's place, I went straight to my landlord. I didn't ask this time. I demanded to see the apartment across the alley. He hesitated. Maybe it was the tone in my voice. Maybe he finally believed something was up. Either way, he agreed. He brought the key, and we met outside the other building. The apartment was dusty, bone dry, empty. Not a stick of furniture, not a single decoration. Just blank walls and wooden floors that creaked like something out of a horror movie. He led me to the back room, the one facing my unit. That's when I saw it, a single metal folding chair, right in front of the window, centered, perfectly positioned to look directly into my apartment. Nothing else in the room, just that chair. The police were called. They showed up, dusted for fingerprints, searched the whole unit. I think they took the chair, but nobody told me what they found. Nothing came of it. No suspect, no answers. Just confirmation that someone had been in a supposedly vacant apartment, watching me night after night. I packed up and moved out within the week. To this day, I have no idea who it was, how they got in, how long they'd been watching. That note, hey, still makes my stomach twist. The fact that I was right the whole time makes it worse. How long did they sit there? How many hours? I've even wondered if it was my landlord, but I don't think it was. If it had been him, no way he would have left the chair there before letting me in. I still dream about that window, still wake up in the middle of the night, cold and certain. Someone, somewhere, is still watching me. I was 12 when my family moved to a quiet rural area in Oregon, the kind of place where the nearest town is a good 30-minute drive and you can hear the wind long before you see it coming. Our new home sat on a big patch of land, surrounded by thick pine forest in every direction. It was peaceful, and completely cut off from the world. The house itself was old, built sometime in the 1940s. It had all the quirks you'd expect: uneven floors, drafty windows, a creepy attic we barely went into, and out back, about 30 feet from the house, there was this beat-up wooden shed. It looked like it had been part of the property forever. The shed was filled with junk from the previous owner: rusty tools, broken shelves, boxes of who knows what. My dad always said he'd get around to cleaning it out, but of course, he never did. Most of the time, we just avoided it altogether. I remember the first night something felt off. It was a weeknight, probably close to midnight. I was under the covers with a flashlight, secretly reading a comic book, when I heard Max, our golden retriever, start barking like crazy. Max was friendly and mellow most of the time, but when he lost it like that, it meant something was wrong. I crept out of bed and peeked out my bedroom window. Max was in the backyard, facing the shed, barking furiously into the darkness. The motion-activated light by the back door had turned on, throwing shadows all over the yard. I squinted, but I couldn't see anyone. Still, Max wouldn't stop. He was pacing, growling, snapping at the air. I didn't go outside. I just watched for a while until he finally calmed down. I went back to bed, a little unsettled, but convinced it was probably just a raccoon or coyote. But the next morning, things got strange. In the dirt between the house and the shed were deep boot prints. Not our boots, bigger, heavier. They started by the side of the house and ended at the shed. There were no prints leading away. My dad brushed it off, said maybe it was some hiker or a drifter passing through. Nothing to worry about, he told me, but I couldn't shake it. Over the next few weeks, Max barked at the shed more and more. Every single time, we'd go out to check and find nothing, but those boot prints. They kept reappearing, always leading to the shed, never away. Then, one night around 2 a.m., I woke up to the sound of footsteps. Slow, deliberate crunching on the gravel outside my window. I froze, every muscle in my body locked up. The steps stopped, then resumed, this time heading toward the shed. I crept to the window and peeked through the blinds. The motion light flicked on, and I swear to God, for just a second, I saw him, a man, tall, thin, wearing a filthy gray coat. He stood still beside the shed door, face hidden in the shadows. Then the light clicked off. I backed away from the window in pure panic and ran to wake up my parents. My dad grabbed his rifle and stormed out the back door. But by the time he got there, the man was gone. The boot prints were fresh, right up to the shed. This time, my dad unlocked it and checked inside. Rusted tools, old tarps, no one there. But he added a new padlock and reinforced the doors anyway. Things went quiet for a while after that. Just long enough for us to start pretending none of it ever happened. Then Max disappeared. We searched everywhere, the woods, the roadside, even checked with neighbors. Nothing, no sign, no collar, no bark, just gone. I was heartbroken. I kept hoping he'd come back. Maybe wandered too far chasing something, but in my gut, I knew something had taken him. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about Max, and the shed, and that man. Around 3 a.m., I heard the back door creak open. I shot up and slipped into the hallway. My dad was already there, holding his rifle tight, his face pale, but determined. Together, we approached the door. The motion light flickered on, and there he was, the man, standing by the shed again, this time holding something in each hand. A knife, and Max's collar. I can't describe the feeling that hit me. My whole body went numb, like the air was ripped out of my lungs. My legs nearly buckled under me. My dad shouted and raised the rifle. The man bolted, sprinting into the woods without hesitation. We called the police. They arrived, searched the area, combed the woods. No sign of him, but inside the shed, that's where they found it. Someone had cleared a space in the dirt. Symbols had been scratched into the floor. Strange, messy shapes. Ugly, disturbing. There was a small pile of bones in one corner. Animal bones, we were told. Hopefully, then behind a false panel in the wall, they found a hidden compartment. Inside was a backpack filled with random items, wallets, watches, scraps of clothing. None of it belonged to us. The most disturbing thing was a notebook, page after page of bizarre symbols and drawings. Eyes, houses, stick figure families. The writing was frantic, almost illegible. Ramblings about watching, about taking, about cleansing. The police took everything. We were told there had been similar reports in the area, though none ever ended with an arrest. That night, as we packed to leave, I glanced out my window one last time. The shed was lit faintly by the porch light. Police tape flapped in the wind. And just beyond the tree line, 10 feet into the woods, I swear I saw a face. It vanished the moment I blinked. I screamed. My dad came running with the rifle, and this time, he wasn't holding back. He ran outside, yelling, firing warning shots into the darkness. He wasn't trying to scare the man anymore. He was furious. This was his home, our home. And some sick stranger had taken that from us. We moved out days later. Left that house, that shed, and that forest behind. I still think about Max, about the eyes in the dark, and the notebook full of strangers' names and belongings. And I still wonder, was that man living in the woods the whole time? It was the summer of 2018. I was fresh out of college, and like most of my friends, just looking for a break, something quiet, simple, and away from screens. So, when Abby suggested a weekend camping trip in the Blue Ridge Mountains, it was an easy yes. There were 5 of us in total: Abby, Marcus, his younger brother Tim, Tim's girlfriend Hannah, and me. We drove deep into the national park, way beyond the main roads, until our phones lost signal and the forest grew thick and wild. We hiked with our gear until we found the perfect clearing beside a lake, Just enough room for our 3 tents, and nothing but trees and silence for miles. That first night was perfect. We set up camp, built a fire, roasted marshmallows, and cracked open a few drinks. Laughter bounced off the trees. Stars blinked into existence above us. For once, the quiet felt like a relief. But the second night, something shifted. It was around 11 p.m. We were still by the fire, swapping stories and jokes, when Marcus suddenly stopped mid-sentence. His eyes locked on something in the woods behind us. "Did you see that?" he asked. We all turned. Nothing. Just shadows and trees. He swore he saw movement. A figure, maybe, ducking behind a tree 30 or 40 yards away. Tim brushed it off. "It's probably a deer," but 20 minutes later, we heard it, a sharp snap from the same direction, a stick breaking. This time, it was loud. Abby got uneasy. She said she wanted to head to bed. None of us argued. The fire got doused, flashlights were clicked on, and we zipped up in our tents. That night, I woke up to something I'll never forget. Breathing, not mine, not from inside the tent, from just outside, maybe 10 feet away. At first, I thought I was half dreaming. But it didn't go away. The sound stayed, heavy and labored, almost like an old man with smoker's lungs. It moved, slowly, from one side of the tent to the other. I held my breath, didn't move, didn't even blink. Could it have been one of my friends? But it didn't sound like someone relieving themselves or stumbling back to bed. There was no sound of footsteps, no zipper, no whispering, just breathing. Then it stopped. I waited, frozen, until eventually my fear started to dull, and I convinced myself it was one of the others and I'd just been spooked. Somehow, I drifted back to sleep. The next morning, no one said much until breakfast. That's when Marcus broke the silence. "Someone was outside our tent last night," he said, eyes wide and tired. Hannah nodded immediately. "I heard them too, walking around the tents." More than once, I asked the group if anyone had gotten up to use the bathroom in the night. Only Tim raised his hand. Marcus snapped his flashlight on and aimed it toward the sound. What we saw still haunts me. A man, fully naked, crouched behind a tree, his skin pale and dirty. The second the light hit him, he scrambled backward into the woods like an animal. We were frozen, shaking. None of us wanted to go back into the tents. Staying together, out in the open, felt safer. Hannah suggested packing up and leaving immediately. But Marcus and I knew better. Hiking in the pitch dark with only flashlights and a possibly deranged man stalking us was a terrible idea. So, we sat by the fire, waiting, listening. I didn't sleep at all. Hours passed in silence. Then, near dawn, I heard the crunch again. A slow, deliberate step. And then, a whisper. "I see you guys." It wasn't any of us. The voice came from out there. I wanted to scream, but no one else reacted. Maybe they were asleep. Maybe they were frozen like I was. And then, something happened that still makes my skin crawl. I heard my tent fabric shift. Ever so slightly, then the zipper started to move. Someone was unzipping it. Slowly, carefully. I exploded in panic and screamed at the top of my lungs. Everyone else started screaming too. Chaos erupted. Whoever was at my tent disappeared. Fast. I zipped it back up, shaking, listening for footsteps. There were none. I stayed awake, watching the sky turn lighter. The sun finally crept over the trees. We didn't talk. We just moved. We packed up everything in record time and began the long hike back. The forest didn't feel peaceful anymore. It felt like it was watching us. When we finally reached the ranger station, we told them everything. The ranger didn't act surprised. "You're not the first group to say something like this," he said. "We've had reports. Some guy, maybe more than one, living out in the woods. Sometimes they steal things. Sometimes, worse." He didn't say what worse meant. And we didn't ask. We tried to laugh it off in the car ride home. Pretended it was just a creepy story to tell later. but none of us were really laughing. I haven't been camping since, and I don't think I ever will, because sometimes, when I close my eyes, I still see that pale man crouched in the trees, and hear that zipper sliding open,